16 people, 5 tons of equipment, tools, and supplies, 15 tons of aviation fuel, 10 days of work at the aircraft landing site, 23 helicopter flight hours ferrying people to the campground and removing the aircraft, 7.5 tons of retrieved aircraft parts and pieces of the plane. And all of this just for one Douglas C-47. Fuselage. The fuselage nose section is crushed and deformed. The frame and the aircraft canopy are warped. Windows are broken. The left engine with the frame and hood are torn off, and the propeller blades are bent. The plane is in need of extensive repair, but is located on a frozen marsh in the watershed of the rivers Yankoda, Lutanka, and Garbit in the tundra 180 kilometers to the north of Volochanka, a settlement of Havamsky region of the Taimyr Autonomous District. Transporting the plane out appears to be impossible. It was a regular passenger flight on 22nd of April 1947. After a 50-hour routine maintenance check, the Douglas C-47 transport aircraft USSR L-1204 took off from Krasnoyarsk. Heading for Cape Kosisti on the route through Turhansk, Dudenka, and Hatanga, the mission was to transport passengers and cargo from the Nordvistroy Airport in Cape Kosisti to Dudenka. At Cape Kosisti, the plane was loaded with 26 adult passengers, 3 children, and 852 kilograms of cargo, then took off. The weather was not good. It was completely overcast. There was continuous snowfall, and visibility was just 1 kilometer. Soon after takeoff, an oil pressure drop was detected in the left engine. Deteriorating weather conditions made a return to the airport impossible. So Captain Maxim Turikov made the decision to continue the flight. During the next 38 minutes, the oil pressure in the left engine dropped to 0. Captain Turikov shut it down, flying on with only the right engine working. Then the generator of the right engine began to malfunction. Later, battery power got so low that communication became impossible. The crew was now flying blind with only one working engine headed for Hatanga on a 280 course. When his calculated flight time had elapsed and he still had not located Hatanga Airport, Turikov decided to try to make it to the next closest airport in Volochanka. Then, after 5 hours of flight, the airplane hit a dangerous icing zone. The right engine overheated, and Turikov was forced to make a precarious gear-down landing on a 1.5-meter tundra snow. A crash ensued. The noise of the plane dropped low, and the left engine propeller snagged the ground, tearing off the engine. But Turikov somehow managed to get the plane back on its landing gear and bring it to a stop. The plane was now severely damaged and stranded in the tundra. The important thing, though, was the passengers and the crew were all safe and sound. The members of the international expedition to recover the Douglas C-47 have gathered together to ship the cargo by helicopter. They are cautious with their predictions and keep silent about the details of their plans. They only express the hope that 2 weeks of midnight sun will give them enough time to completely disassemble the plane and remove it from its crash site. So it begins a new chapter in the extraordinary story of this airplane. We have set up camp and begun to work. Everything goes much faster than planned. Despite the fact that the plane has been stuck in the tundra for almost 70 years, Exposed to freezing winds and snowstorms, bolts are easily unscrewed. It's as if the plane itself wants to return home and helps the expedition team do its work.
In the expedition, we have an area of expertise, something that we are very good in, and then we also help everyone else for general work and whenever something needs to be done and takes many people. So my job, as I saw it, was to consult, to give technical advice, and to help with the separation of the wings and the fuselage from the center wing.
That same day, the plane had some visitors. Among them were relatives of the missing crew members. Evelina Ansiferova, the daughter of Captain Maxim Turikov, and Dmitry Skobelov, a relative of radio operator Alexei Smirnov. Igor Spiridinko, the head of the Expedition Center of the Russian Geographical Society of the Siberian Federal District. We've been preparing the expedition for 3 years. This spring, we entered the active phase of it.
Сразу ком подступил, сами понимаете, слез.
I had that lump in the throat feeling, you know, when I looked out the porthole and saw the wreckage of the plane below. What other emotions could I have but those of a daughter? My father had landed the plane here and saved the lives of the passengers.
Очень отрадно видеть, что такие...
It's very gratifying to see all of this as a recovery of the past, of memories, of course. We must tie it all together somehow and learn from it. For 4 days, they waited for help to arrive. Then, on April 26, 1947, at the urging of others, Captain Turikov, air mechanic Pismarov, radio operator Smirnov, and 6 passengers set out in search of the nearest settlement. The rest of the passengers stayed at the airport with co-pilot Anoshka. The remains of Captain Turikov would be found only 6 years later in 1953. The fate of the others who went with him is still unknown. They waited 19 days for help, shared meager food supplies, encouraged each other, consoled each other, kept on hoping, kept on believing. For 19 long days, the Douglas was their home, their salvation, their ark of refuge amidst the frozen tundra. They rode on it, sitting here all alone, running out of everything. Spirits are high. Celebrated the 1st of May. Everyone is cheerful. They had no idea that meanwhile this huge drama was taking place on the Big Earth. After 2 weeks of search in the vast Hatanga area, when the hope of finding these people alive started to fade away, the search for the Douglas was considered a dead end and had ceased. It was worthless to waste gas, airport resources, and pilots working long hours because there was a blizzard in tundra. The pilots couldn't see the ground, connection was lost. When Tamara Timofeevna, the wife of Flight Radio Officer Alexei Smirnov, learned about it, she decided to take desperate measures. She sent an express telegram to Comrade Stalin. The telegram said, Moscow, Kremlin, to IV Stalinu in April 1947. Plane C-47 made an emergency landing in tundra. The search was organized poorly. It didn't give any results and was stopped. People were doomed to death. I'm asking you to give the order to organize another search by polar pilots and save these people. Best regards, the Flight Radio Officer Smirnov wife. 2 hours later, she received an answer. Be brave. People are the priority for our country. The search has been resumed. Best polar pilots like Shatrov, Fedorenko, and others were sent there. Hope for a good outcome. Best regards, IV Stalin. Polar aviation pilots immediately came from Moscow for the rescue. Meanwhile, people in the force camp ran out of food. They decided to go look for houses. A group of 10 people who could still walk were organized. Sergei Anaska, who had a distress gun, was one of them. These were the people who shot the distress gun and were spotted by the pilot Fedor Shatrov and his crew on May 11, 1947. That day became like a second birthday in every survivor's life. But the Douglas remained there for the next 69 years. The fuselage was detached from the center section. The wings were removed. Almost everything was dismantled. History suddenly came alive right before your eyes. This folding crane was a huge help. It was a special order for the expedition. Without it, it would have been next to impossible to drag the plane out of its marshy tundra. It was very cold, just 3 degrees above zero. The wind never stops blowing. The plane has been completely dismantled. The airframe pieces are being prepared to be shipped on a barge.
То, что мы делаем сейчас,
What we are doing now, nobody has done before. We have some experience retrieving planes, but in Russia, it's actually the first time we've done anything like this. It is important to ship the plane in good order and condition. It has not yet been reassembled and restored in its original form. Now begins the most difficult and dangerous stage of the recovery operation. Pilots from the company Aerogil will use the Mi-8 helicopter suspension device to transport all the parts of the plane to a barge on the river Pyatsina. The wind is very strong. It is too risky for the helicopters to take off. The expedition team must wait for better weather. The Douglas C-47 has been loaded onto the barge and heads off for Krasnoyarsk by water. The expedition team goes home by plane. The international expedition team is back in Krasnoyarsk. The Douglas C-47 has been successfully recovered ahead of schedule. It has taken only 8 days to dismantle it. The plane wasn't expected to arrive in Krasnoyarsk until the middle of September. Once again, there was a surprise. It took the river barge Kislovodsk just 7 days to deliver the Douglas to Krasnoyarsk.
этот самолет будет на территории Красноярского края, положит.
This plane will stay in Krasnoyarsk region and will be the first exhibit in the new Museum of Military Aviation. It will contribute to the study of the polar region and will throw new light on its history. The airplane is offloaded and transported to a storage facility where the long work of restoration would take place. The plane would be a one-of-a-kind exhibit of the exploration of the Russian North Museum that is to be built in Krasnoyarsk.
Музей будем делать, и есть поддержка.
The museum will be built. It has wide support. There will be an exploration of the North Museum because we have exhibits for it and we have the people for it. It is not just a plane. It is an invaluable historical treasure. It was given to the Soviet Union through the Lend-Lease program and arrived in Krasnoyarsk via the Krasnoyarsk air route. It participated in the Northern Sea Route convoys. It was an ice explorer. There isn't any museum in Russia with a plane like this. The Douglas C-47 is a tribute to all people who worked in the Alaskan-Siberian route, a tribute to the wartime ferry pilots who worked in 1942 to 1945 in absolutely hellish conditions, and to the peacetime pilots who were the very first pilots of the Krasnoyarsk Civic Air Fleet. We must learn this history and always remember it.